Hello, and thank you for joining me. It's Allan Laboucan here with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. This is a fourth show in a four-part series that I've been discussing since, what was it? Let me just do a screen share here of my Substack site, rocksandstocks.substack.com. This is where you can find all my work, whether it's my video interviews, my video sector reports or written reports that I put out. And back on August the 27th, so last Sunday, I started this series talking and headlining it as "We have a seasonal trend and poor sentiment for mining stocks that has created tremendous bargains." I brought a bunch of companies that I found that are suffering from this seasonal trend and poor sentiment that I think will start to perform much better when we get out of the summer after Labor Day. Today is Labor Day, so I think it's a timely point to close up this series. And what happens is every year, like clockwork, at the end of August, you get everybody off on their, trying to get their last vacations and family visits done. And the mining stocks suffer from low volume. And with the background of poor sentiment towards mining stocks, you get these tremendous bargains. It's very similar to what happens at the end of the year after the tax loss selling season is over with. And when the new year turns around, we often see a pretty strong market in January. And that's, exactly what happens with the mining stocks in the after Labor Day. And part of that is because there's some big shows that come up, big mining conferences that come up in September, October, November. In September, there's two that are back to back. One is in Beaver Creek, the Beaver Creek Precious Metals, and also the Denver Mining Show. And these happen back to back. And so a lot of companies appear, really good companies appear at those conferences, and they make those conferences available to see online. So it's a great opportunity for companies to get out there and tell their story. And then in November, early November, you have the New Orleans Mining Conference, and that's a big one as well. Speaking of that New Orleans conference, Brian Lundeen is the guy who puts that conference on every year, and we've got him as a special guest in 2 days from now, on Wednesday, September the 6th. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. I'll briefly talk about, I have already talked briefly about those seasonal trends and the poor sentiment. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this poor sentiment issue that's plaguing the junior mining sector right now. You've got metal prices, gold, silver, copper, and other metals prices at pretty healthy prices. And yet the gold, the mining stocks in those various metals are trading at really low valuations right now. I believe that there are lots of reasons to be bullish on gold and silver, as well as copper and other battery metals. And, ultimately, I think that's going to take the prices of those metals much higher. And then we'll see the mining stocks start to join the party. So I'm expecting this poor sentiment to start improving between here and the end of the year as the prices of metals improve throughout the end of the year. The last interview that I did this week was a few days ago, and I talked to a chap named Jim Rogers, who's working with Dynasty Gold. I really believe that this could be one of the best interviews I've done with a geologist to help investors understand how a talented geologist goes about exploration. And I highly recommend you check out this interview. He did a wonderful job of explaining the great opportunity that Dynasty Gold has at their Thundercloud project in Ontario, just outside the town of Dryden. It's not very far from Red Lake, Ontario, and the big mines up there, the Red Lake mines. Jim spent a lot of his career at those mines, so he understands these orogenic gold systems very well, and that's what Dynasty Gold has. Dynasty Gold is early in the exploration, but and most of their drilling has been done very close to surface. They have had some spectacular results, like over 70 meters of 8 grams per ton of gold. They had a 3-meter intersection of 151 grams a ton of gold, and inside of that was a 1.5-meter intersection of 246 grams per ton of gold. So it's really encouraging to see Jim Rogers involved with Dynasty Gold because of his expertise with orogenic gold systems from all of his experience at the Red Lake mines. And helping them to design the program as they go deeper. Jim has had a lot of experience seeing underground what the rocks look like and through drilling. And he likes what he sees at Dynasty Gold's project. It's got all of the same hallmarks as the Red Lake mines, and yet has a very modest valuation. They've completed some drilling that the core is in the lab for assaying, and those could come out at any time now. That's the key news to watch on the immediate horizon, but shortly they'll also start drilling some of Jim Rogers' targets that he's identified the depth potential at the Thundercloud project. And you know, with his guidance of where to drill, I think the company is in very good hands to deliver a lot of high-grade gold intersections with their current drilling and their upcoming drilling. So take a look at that interview. All right, so today what I wanted to talk about was I've got the final batch of companies that are suffering from this summer doldrums, and then the poor sentiment that I think we're on the verge of seeing that sentiment change and move into the post Labor Day weekend. So here's some of the headlines. Summa Silver reports excellent metallurgical test results from their high-grade gold silver project in Nevada. They discovered 2 new high-grade silver gold veins east of the Tonopah mining district. I'm very positive about this project that they have in Nevada called the Hughes Project. They've done a lot of geophysics and some drilling, but I think that they've now got a handle on the geophysics and where to drill. And they're drilling away now, and they have a bunch of assays pending from the Nevada project. And then not too long from now, they'll start to work drill again on their Mogollon project in New Mexico, and that is where they've had some just off the charts high grades of 433 grams per ton of silver equivalent over 23 meters, including 1.2 meters at 2,686 grams per ton of silver equivalent. Really high grade stuff in these 2 areas where they have found epithermal veins. One of the first tricks that you need to pull off when you're looking for an orogenic or an epithermal vein system is to find the boiling zone of the epithermal vein system. And they have most definitely done that at both projects now. And now it becomes a process of expanding the boiling zones of the known veins and looking for additional veins. And that's what they're doing at both the Hughes project in Nevada near Tonopah and also in New Mexico at their Mogollon project. And I think that this company is going to have a lot of news out over the coming months. They were a former sponsor of my shows. They're not currently, but I'm very bullish on what they have. And I think that, again, that, when you're coming from a low valuation, you need catalysts to unlock shareholder value. And I expect a lot of very good news from this company, from their project in Nevada and their project in New Mexico. So check out Summa Silver. Another company that I follow that's not a sponsor is Kuya Silver. I've done one interview with their management, and in July, late July, they announced that they started their largest ever drill program at the Silver Kings project in Cobalt, Ontario. You can see some of the highlights of their recent drilling intersected grassroots discovery of 15,372 grams per ton of silver over 3.34 meters and 2,424 grams of silver over 2.49 meters. This is extremely high-grade silver in a well-known place to look for silver, and they've got pending assay results. They talk about being excited about their drill campaign, the largest ever undertaken on their Silver Kings project, to expand the size of the recent discovery. They want to test other targets that they built up recently. They wanted to emphasize the initial Angus vein discovery. It was made by exploratory drill testing of historically overlooked areas. And they have several other similar targets in the world-class mining district. They think they've got a new important discovery in the Cobalt area, and a very good exploration model, land package, and technical ability to accomplish their efforts. As you can see here, they've got a cross-section of where there is the outcropping vein, McNamara and the Angus vein, exploratory underground workings, the drill holes, where they hit the high grade, the kind of rocks that they're in. And as you can see, they needed to get through this part to get down to the juicy stuff. So now they know where to look for the juicy high grade. And that's exactly what they're doing with their drilling. Since the drilling announcement, they announced that they had done a non-brokered private placement, and they closed the first tranche and a final tranche. That got them about 800 grand, which goes a long way in cobalt because you're not way out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, I'm expecting some very good news out of Kuya Silver. I love this project. I love seeing that super high grade silver stuff. And I think they're going to deliver a lot of good news. So check out Kuya Silver. Mag Silver is not a sponsor, but a company that I follow very closely because they are in the midst of developing one of the highest margin, low cost, high margin silver mines anywhere in the world. And they're in partnership with Fresnillo PLC, which is one of the best silver miners in Mexico. And here they talk about their quarterly report. The key highlights: concentrate production at high-grade Juanicipio mine commenced in Q1 2023. Following successful commissioning phase at Juanicipio, the processing facility hasn't been operating at or above 85% of its design capacity, and with silver recovery consistently above 88%. They announced that the Juanicipio mine processing facility and other vital systems were operating in line with or rapidly approaching design capacity. Now, this is important because they're still ramping up to full commercial production. They therefore declared full commercial production effective June 1st, 2023. But in reality, they still have more to get it up to the nameplate level. All major construction activities have now been completed, and Juanicipio is demonstrating its ability to sustain ongoing production levels. During Q2, as a result of successful commissioning of the Juanicipio processing facility, processing of higher grade material commenced with commensurate improvements in silver recovery and associated grade. The average head grade was 498 grams per ton of silver. That is some very high grade silver to be mined. And again, they have a very low cost of production. After completion of the startup phase, approximately 4.4 million ounces of silver have been produced from Juanicipio processing facility from March 2023 to the end of June 2023, and production is expected to continue to increase steadily through Q3 2023, where it is envisioned the processing facility will be running at nameplate. So they still got a little bit of ramping up to do to get it to that nameplate capacity. They were included in the NYSE ARCA Gold Miners Index, which is tracked by the Van Eck Vector Gold Miners ETF, effective June 20th, 2023. They reported net income of 19 million or 19 cents per share for 3 months ended June 2023. Operational information as reported by their operator Fresnillo. The Juanicipio remains on track to reach nameplate production in Q3 2023. Excess mineralized material from Juanicipio continues to be processed through the nearby Saucito and Fresnillo beneficiation plants on an available capacity basis. For the 3 months ended June 30th, 37,000 tons of mineralized material were processed through Juanicipio, Fresnillo, and Saucito plants, with 4.8 million payable silver ounces, 9,500 payable gold ounces, 3,000 payable lead tons, and 4,582 payable zinc tons. Average silver grade, as they said earlier, was 98 grams. Revenue totaled 134 million, less 54 million in production and transportation costs, and 17 million in depreciation amortization, netting 62 million in gross profit by Juanicipio. At the end of the quarter, Juanicipio held balances of 8.5 million, flat relative to the first quarter. Strong operating cash flows driven by higher milling rates, higher head feed grade, and stronger metal prices were offset by ramp-up working of capital requirements and ongoing underground development expenditures. So that gets back to the point that this company is still ramping up to nameplate capacity at their mine. And so that, the free cash flow is going towards building out that plant. And now you can, they're at that sweet spot of the second phase or second wave of the Lassonde curve, and when they bring a project into production. Now, why I think that they're going to have an exceptional future ahead of them is as they get this up to nameplate capacity with the low costs and the high grade, they're going to be creating a lot of free cash flow. And low cost producers tend to outperform their peers. And I think that's what you're going to see happen with Mag Silver. Now, this is a much bigger, valuation company than most that I follow. But I think what it offers for investors that have, lower risk profiles is the chance to get into a silver mining company and get torque to silver going higher, and the operational success that will come from generating a lot of free cash flow. So this is for your investor that wants less risk, but exposure to silver and gold production, and they also want capital gains potential. And that's what I see in Mag Silver, and I think it's a rock solid investment for companies or investors that want exposure to silver miners. Okay, now I want to talk about Dios exploration. Dios expands its Lithium North project and starts its field program at its lithium projects located in the James Bay in Quebec. This was put out on the 29th of August. They increased their land package and they started their field season. And so I had a chance to talk with their CEO before this exploration season started, Marie-Josie Girard. And I've known Marie-Josie, well, I've followed her for many years because she's a talented geologist and she's focused in Quebec. And as things started to get really exciting in Quebec for lithium projects, they did a really good review of all of their geological databases, and they came up with some very high quality projects. And, knowing what I know about Marie-Josie and her team, I know that they have a very strong geological database. And a bunch of good projects, and they have jumped into the lithium space in a big way. But they're not getting a lot of love yet, and I think that that's going to turn around. As you can see, here are their various land packages, and they show a lot of promise. Here you can see East Clarkie. I'm very interested about this and this Clarkie because it's right at the contact between two key rock packages. They've got lots of signs. These are lake sediment lithium hits, and as you can see, there's a lot of them. The black line is the study area, so they were studying over in this area. And this is where they've got a lot of the lake sediment hits. And so they're out there doing that preparatory work to get ready to drill. I think that they could be a good candidate to jump into that excitement for Quebec exploration for lithium. There's Patriot has just taken the world by storm with their discovery, the Cadillac discovery, and I think Dios could be a newcomer into that Quebec lithium space by a team that has had a lot of experience in Quebec, and especially in the James Bay portion of Quebec. So Dios is another one to put on your radar screen and do your homework about. I'm now going to move to Aston Bay. Aston Bay has a very exciting project in their Storm Copper project in Nunavut. It's quite a far distance to the north at Somerset Island in Nunavut. But what they're looking for is a sediment-hosted copper project, and all of their drilling so far this season has indicated that theory that they've had for a few years is now forming and coming into shape with the drilling that's going on this year. They're an interesting story because they own a 20% interest in the project that's carried through to production decision. So while that is happening, they would need to spend millions to get it to that stage. So they brought in a partner. The partner is called American West Mining or American West Metals. And so on Friday, the stock was halted. The American West stock was halted, and the stock in Aston Bay moved up quite dramatically because this is an Australian listed company, and only the Australian listed company was halted. And then over the long weekend, they came out with results, and I'm pretty impressed with the results, to tell you the truth. I mean, they talked about some of their holes where they're seeing visual copper sulfide mineralization. They show you where they've hit in this news release. Let me see the date of it here. I think it was September the 4th. So it was out. That's September the 4th in Australia, which was September the 3rd here in Canada, or up in Canada. And as you can see, some very sweet numbers: 46 grams of 2.2% copper, starting right at 64 meters. Now that's from downhole. I'm not sure of what that is in vertical depth, because this is an angled hole. But nonetheless, you've got very high grade over a thick intersection right at surface. 15.6 meters at 4.2% copper from 65 meters, 0.3 meters at 42.8% copper, starting right at the surface at 67 meters. Another hole hit 27.4 meters at 1.5% copper from surface, so right at the surface. 7.6 included in that was 7.6 meters of 4% copper, starting at 7.6 meters below surface. 27.4 meters at 1.3% copper from 30 meters, including 9.1 meters at 2.15% copper. That is very high grade copper to off the charts bonanza grade copper. So they are really proving up this system is what they think it is, which is a sediment hosted copper project, and these things can get extremely large. And so let's take a look at this map here, where they announced on August 17th that the fourth diamond drill hole hits thick interval of visual copper sulfides at Storm. But what I particularly want to show you, read this news release, there's lots of great information in there, but here is the geophysical targets that they're finding in what they consider could be an entire field of these sediment-hosted deposits. And as you can see from the drill hole locations and what they've talked about so far, they're having a lot of success proving that the geophysics is working like a charm. This covers a very large area. Here's the scale. That's 1 kilometer. And as you can see, there's several kilometers here, and they're all associated to these faults. And so they have, as I said, a pretty spectacular project. They're hitting lots of excellent stuff with their drilling, and they're really getting an understanding on the structural story, as well as how to interpret the geophysics and where to focus their drilling. And so then they announced these high grades, exceptionally high grades, great looking stuff. But the stock in American West Metals in Australia today was down, and it was down quite significantly. And I think that a lot of that had to do with them talking quite extensively. They must have mentioned in this news release 12 times, over 10 times, how they're moving towards a resource calculation. Now, I'm always cautious about exploration companies that are moving into this the resource calculation, because what that sends a message to the market is that they're in a rush to get into the development discount window of the Lassonde curve. And companies that ignore the Lassonde curve and investors that ignore the Lassonde curve are making a big mistake. And when you are there's two big waves in the Lassonde curve. One is when you have exploration success, and the other is when you bring a project into production. But in between those two is where you do resource calculations, preliminary economic assessments, feasibility studies, permitting, and this can take several years, and often stocks go dormant during this period. And so they're at the sweet spot of the first wave of the Lassonde curve, but they're already talking about resource calculations before they even understand the dimensions and various different targets that they have on the project. And I think that is ultimately why the stock is off, and it probably will affect Aston Bay when they go to trading tomorrow morning. But nonetheless, I'm very bullish on this project because you're going to see some curves in the road, if you will, along the way to success. But I think when you get a sediment-hosted property with those kind of grades, ultimately this will be a mine that's mined by a much bigger company that takes out American West and Aston Bay. Now, there's a good chance that Aston Bay stock performs better going into that kind of a scenario because they don't have to spend any of their own money. They got a free ride through to a production decision. So American West, yes, they have the 80% interest, but they have to spend 100% of the money to get to that feasibility study, which is going to mean that to the production decision, which is going to mean that they're going to have to put out a lot of stock. And Aston Bay gets carried for their 20% interest. And, both these companies still have a modest valuation, but I kind of describe myself a little bit as I'm bullish on the discovery and the way that the geophysics are working like a charm and the understanding they're getting from the structural story, but I don't like this rush of American West metals to get into that development discount window of the Lassonde curve. So, and then you've got seasonality issues to deal with because they're up at Somerset Island. The season's going to be fairly short. They are looking at ways to expand that season or how to deal with it. But I think that this is going to cause a lot of waves in the stock, a lot of volatility. So as a trading vehicle, you can probably look at Aston Bay to buy on the dips and sell into the strength, and do that a few times and ultimately build up your position and take the risk out by using your gains to reduce your risk. So as I said, I'm very bullish on what they have and what they're doing with their drilling and what the geophysics is telling them and the structural interpretations. Not so bullish or even bearish on the fact that they are trying to quickly get into that development discount window of the Lassonde curve. But ultimately, on an asset basis, I also think that Aston Bay could outperform American West because they get that free ride at 20%. And I think that free ride will be to the point that this project gets taken over by a much larger company before a production decision is made. So that means there's going to be a lot of news out, some not a lot of news during the off season, and then a lot of news when they get cranked back up. So those are the variables you have to think about, and I hope I sort of helped you some guidance there on the nuances of the story. All righty, so that's my last of my series of 4 on the seasonality issues and the poor sentiment causing some tremendous opportunities in the mining sector, especially amongst the smallest of companies. And as always, it's important for you to speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. And ultimately doing your homework. Whether companies are sponsors of my shows or not sponsors of my shows, I'm biased because I'm like anybody else that forms an opinion on anything. If you present your opinions, you want to be right. And so that's my biggest bias and probably my most important bias. But I try to form my opinions based on my 30 years of experience in this sector. And ultimately, I try to sort of be a guide or a impetus for you to do your homework on the companies I talk about. And so check out their websites, check out their corporate presentations, and do that homework, which I think is really important. I think investors want to understand the companies they're investing in, understand the news flow, understand the projects that they're involved in. And I think that will help you to make sound, logical decisions on your investments and not emotional ones based on the day-to-day fluctuations of stocks. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.